Beginning our Daf Mesechtas Kidushin Daf Dalad, begin 6 lines down at the top of the Amud, where the Gemara continues to explain this opening halacha of our Mishnah, our Perika Mesechta Ha'isha Niknes B'Shalish Jerachim. So the woman could be acquired, meaning essentially that there could be Kidushin in 3 different ways, and one of them was with the kinyan of Kesef. The Gemara says, where do you know a woman can be acquired with money? And how do you know it goes to the father, as we learn in the Mishnah, in the different Mesechta? So the Gemara brought a source, a pasuk of Yatzachim and Kasav. The Gemara is going to ask on that, say, really, is that the pasuk as the source that she goes out and from this adon, but from another adon there is her father, meaning then she goes out with money and it goes to the father. But the Gemara is going to say we need a pasuk for a different source. Shares corresponds to Kalzach and Necheskel to Entam Daf Chaim. Today's daf. So discussing today's daf are some technical things regarding the naira and the begeres. A naira is the point in which a girl develops simonim. Generally, at the age of 12 years, we assume that a girl developed those signs. A begeres is the point in which a girl completely matured. So that's 6 months later. So generally, you'd say that's the age of 12 years and 6 months old. Now, an islandess is a woman that over the age of 20 who has not yet developed as other women. We assume that she's not the same in the feminine characteristics as a regular girl. The halach of Eved Ivri in Oichel B'Trum, the Gemara, it comes up in the Gemara's discussion. No matter what type of Eved Ivri, for 6 years or for till Yovel, it doesn't need the truma of his master. That's a kohen. Some other terms and concepts is Milsa Das B'Kavachaymer Tarch B'Kasav L'Kra. The Gemara brings that something that you could learn out from a Kavachaymer. Still, the pasuk will go out of the way and explain it explicitly. The Gemara then introduces the second source that Kesef can accomplish a Kidushin, which that was what we discussed on the previous stuff. And then the Gemara is going to bring another source that Kesef is a kinyan, and the source that Bia can accomplish a Kidushin. And also the concept of Amavriya, Yitze B'Guroi in Kesef, that a Jewish maidservant, that she could leave the master by diminishing the amount of the payment. So if she was bought for 600 for 6 years, and then after 3 years, you pay out 300, that's another way she could leave from her service. To begin the current daf Dalid, 6 lines down at the top of the Amud, the Gemara in the previous daf had taught the source for Kidushin Kesef. As we said, it says in the pasuk Yatzachim and Kesef. This is by the pasuk of the Amavriya. When she becomes a naira, so she goes out for free and no money. She doesn't have to pay anything. She just could leave. But what the Gemara had wondered, well, if you're saying chinam, that means ein kesef. It's the same thing. Ein kesef seems to be redundant. Oh, so the Gemara says, must be telling us, ein kesef ladin zeh. Yeah, for this master, when she's Amavriya, there's no money when she leaves. But the yesh kesef ladin achar, but there is money when she leaves from another master. Umanu, who's that master? It's Avia, her father, when he accepts her Kidushin. So you see both ideas that we had asked in the previous daf. We want to know, how do you know that you see Kidushin, Kesef is a kinyan by Kidushin? And also, how do you know it goes to the father? From this pasuk, that we see that she's going to be acquired for Kidushin with Kesef, and that it's going to go to the father. However, that's where our Gemara continues, 6 lines down at the top of the Amud. Says the Gemara, is it really true that this pasuk is coming to teach us the kinyan of Kesef by Kidushin and that it goes to the father? But you needed to teach you something else, like the time to learn the Brisa. The time to learn the Brisa, and it gets technical here. But again, all we're trying to prove is that we're using this pasuk for something else, and not extra to learn out this halacha of kinyan kesef by Kidushin. The Brisa quotes the same pasuk and says in the pasuk v'yatzachim that she's going to go out for free. Now the thing is, it doesn't say explicitly in the pasuk when that is that this Jewish girl that's a maidservant is going to go out free. Says the Brisa, Eli me bagers. This refers to when she reaches the complete stage of adolescence, which is when she's changing to be from a naira to be a begeres. Then when it says in kasev, well, not with money, meaning something else is taking her out of being a servant. Oh, Eli me nairis. That the days of puberty, which as we described in the introduction, is 12 months, and let's say if you'll assume that bas mitzvah is the age of when she becomes a naira. Begeres is 6 months later. So whenever that she becomes a naira, 6 months later, Begeres. So the Gemara later is going to ask, say, wait a second. If she's leaving from being a maidservant when she's a naira, when she's 12, then what is 12 and a half? What is Bagres doing? What is she leaving then? You can't be sold or be a slave when you're in that time period of puberty. So what are you trying to say with Bagres? But Al Kapanim, the Gemara's question is valid to the sense of that you're using the pasuk of Ein Kasev to teach you that the Amavriya leaves by Yemei Nairis. How is it extra to teach me in Kesef Laden Zeh Aviyesh kesef lo achar, that there's Kidushin kesef that goes to the father if the pasuk is being used for something else. So Ravina says, no. You learn that both from this pasuk. You know why? Because im kain, if the pasuk was only teaching me this one idea that you learned in the brisa, lemikra, the pasuk should say ein kasef, meaning without a yud. As the Gemara is going to shortly bring, we find psukim me'ein yavami. We find ein without a yud. So my ein kasef. So why is it saying ein kasef with a yud? It's extra. Oh, that's coming to teach me this drasha of ein kesef laden zeh, aviyesh kesef laden acher. In the word ein kesef is aleph yud nun. The Gemara is going to shortly bring the source that you could write the word ein without a yud. Why do you have to say with a yud? To tell you this drasha that there's no money to this master, aviyesh kesef laden acher, but there is money to another master. Uman niyu av, and who is that? It's the father. So on that, the Gemara asked a question which might be bothering all of us. Umimai didarshinan, and where do you get this idea that you expound the yud of ein, hachi, like this, that it's his own drasha, as if you don't need to have a yud, and you're asking, what's is the yud over here that's telling me that ein kesef laden zeh, v'yesh kesef laden acher. So the Gemara says, the Tanya, like we learned in the Brisa, the Gemara brings the source. It's a pasuk in Vayikra. It says if a daughter of a kohen is going to be a widow or a divorcee, and the zera ein la, and she didn't have any children from her last husband, so the pasuk says she goes back to her father's household to be like she was a young girl, and she could go back to eat truma. She could go back to eat from the father's stuff. Now says the Brisa, ainly I would not know that it would prevent the bas kohen from going back to eat truma from her father's household. Elazara, only if she has children from this Yisrael that she was married to. It's only if she has no children, then she can go back. But if she has children, she's not going to be able to. But Zera Zara Minayin, how do I know that even if she has grandchildren, meaning let's say her child passed away, and she only has a grandchild, how do I know that even that would be considered a psul that she can't go back to her father? Tamlim says in the pasuk Zera Ein La Mitayud, to tell you, and that's how you could really read it. Ein could be read as ayin with a tseirei under the yud. Ayin la, look after her to see that even if her son died, but maybe that son had a son, and he'll also prevent her from going back to her father's house to eat truma. Now, the Brisa continues and says, "Ve'inli elazera kasha." I would only know if the children she have are valid children. Zera pasal minayin, but invalid children. For example, a mamzer, how do you know if even such a child would be considered as a child to prevent her to go back to her father's household? Which Taisus actually says from the Ri that must be, if you're talking about Zera Apostle, must be Zera Zara Apostle, meaning a mamzer as a grandchild. Because if she has a mamzer as her own child, that means to say she had be with someone that's apostle to her, because you only create a mamzer with someone that's apostle to you. That itself would hustle her from kahuna. She wouldn't be able to eat truma anyway. So the Rebbe says it can't be talking about zera apostle. It has to be zera zara apostle, meaning her child went off and married some who knows what, and then they had a mamzer. And therefore you can't say literally zera apostle. It says the Rebbe must be zera zara apostle. Okay, or the azuna mamza, the ainikala mamza, whatever it is. How do you know that any one of those would prevent her from going back to her father? Tamalayma zera einla. Again, there's an extra yud in Einla. To tell you, Ayinla, look into it. There's an extra drush over here in the yud. Says Gemara, wait a second. But you just told me that you need to have the extra yud to teach me that an ainakul b'chlal, a grandchild, will prevent you from going back, even though you don't have any children. So how you tell me now it's coming to teach you if you have a child or a grandchild, like the Rebbe says, it's possible as a mamzer, you're already using it just to tell you in general a grandchild. You wouldn't know that. It says Zera. You wouldn't know Zera Zara. So how are you learning of both things from that? It says, no, it's not true. Zera Zara lo yitzchakra. The truth is, the first thing we said regarding a grandchild in general, I don't need a pasuk of the yud, the extra yud, to tell me that that's going to prevent her from going back to her father's household. Because as the famous saying goes, the b'nei banim harehem kabanim. The grandchildren are like the children, which the Gemara learns on Yevamis, some of Beis and Beis. So I don't need to have, when it says Zera, a special drasha to tell me that it includes zera zera, because that is the same thing. The bnei banim are kebanim, so that's the same thing as zera. Rather, ki yitzchak, whether you need the pasuk the extra yud for lazera apostle to teach me, even if the child is apostle, maybe you would think that would not be considered as having the zera. Tell me, no, that is considered zera, and therefore it's going to be, she's not going to be able to go back to her father's house. Okay, but again, one thing we see from the brisa is that the brisa is darshaning the yud of a zera ein la. So you see that you could darshan the yud, and therefore we are darshaning, right? Although ein kasav really is teaching you that eli may naris, but shtetin the yud. What's the extra yud for? To tell me this drasha that's our mesechta starts off with that ein kasav laden zeh of a yesh kasav laden acher. But then the Gemara asks, wait a second, okay, you brought a brisa that supports this, but Tana gufe minale. The Tana of the brisa himself, where does he get this idea from? That he understands that you could read the word ein without a yud, and then he's darshaning the extra yud to tell me this halacha of Zer Apostle. The Darish Hachi that he expounds such a thing. So Amri, they say, because Ksiv, you have psukim like this, like in Bamidbar. It says, Me'in Bilam. When they came back to Balak, it says, Bilam refuses to go with us. The word Me'in is missing the yud. So do you have a pasuk in Devarim? Me'in Yavami. My Yavam refuses to do Yibam when they do the Chalitza process. They're like, Sibu Yud. Doesn't say Yud, and it means no. Here it says the yud. Obviously, the extra yud is telling me a drasha, and that's why by zera ein la you could learn a zera puzzle, and therefore by ein kasev by amavriya you could learn ein kasev by the amavriya when she leaves. But there is kasev when she leaves from her father when she gets engaged to her chassan. To say there's going to be kasev la denacher, which is going to go to the father. Me'ein and ein. What's the word? What's the shirish of? Right. Right, but what's the shirish of it? If you go with two letter shirashim, let's say, there's three letter shirashim, right? But if it's two letter shirashim, everything comes down to the two. What's the shirish of me'ein? It's the aleph and the nun, and it's meaning no. He doesn't want to refusal. It's all the same etymology. So that's what. Yeah, but you're right. Both examples happen to be that, and it would be interesting why those other words. Is there other sources that don't have But the Gemara is learning that, it doesn't have to have a yud, and if it has a yud, we could darshan, and therefore that's going to be our source. Now, the Gemara says, going back to the previous daf, we almost like cut short what we were just discussing, because the Gemara only had a question and saying, really, is that the source? It's need for something else. The Gemara says, no problem. You can learn both things, because mitayud is under the zach, you can learn nacha drasha. Fine. But now the Gemara goes back and says, if you recall, on the previous Amid, we had discussed that what's the source of this halacha that it goes to the father, what's the rights the father has in his daughter. We had a few things we spoke about, that he can be made for Nadarim, that he gets her Ma'aseh Yadayim, that he gets her Kesef Kidushin, he gets her monies of Knas, and he gets a few different things from his daughter. So the Gemara explains now, we had to write that the Kidushin of this daughter goes to the father, and we also had to write that her income goes to her father, as we had learned on the previous Amid, where it says as bitay la'ama. V'chiyimka as bitay la'ama, we said really the word la'ama is extra, because of course if he's selling her as a maidservant. What's la'ama? To compare bitay la'ama, we said just like amma, all the ma'aseh time goes to the master, so too by a daughter, all the ma'aseh time go to the father. So the Gemara is basically asking, saying, well, why do you need to have both of them? Why can't you just leave it on one and you'll know the other? Because you say whatever the daughter has goes to the father. So says the Gemara, no, because had the father only written that the Kidushin go to the father, how I would have said, because the girl herself didn't put in any effort to get the ring that the chassan is giving her. He loves this girl, he's giving her a ring. So it wasn't great effort she put in, so I could understand it goes to the father. Of Maisi Adel, the Katarchabu, but her handiwork, she worked in staff as the whole second half. She was up with all these kids and doing all the work. She put in the effort. I would say it's going to go to the father. That deservedly goes to her and would go to her. Therefore, I would have to say also that Maisi Dem go to her. And V'yashmin Maisi Dem, had we only said that the earnings go to her, I would say the Komisaz Naminhe, because who buys her clothing? Who's on AliExpress? Who's buying all these stuff, all these food and clothing? So the father's like, okay, it's a kimpme. I pay for schalim and I get. So what you go to camp, you work as babysitter, and he said, I get that. So because he's thinking about that. He knows that's what she gets, and he's get it back. But the Kidushin, the Almakasi law, where that comes from a third-party source. In other words, the way Rashi says, his das wasn't on that's why I'm feeding her. His das was, you're going to work, you're going to go to the marketplace, you're going to sell the apples for the family, and I'm going to get that because I feed you and you give back to the family. A Kidushin, which is somewhere from a random source that this young man is, he's giving her a ring, I would say maybe that goes to her. Therefore, you need to say both of them. They wouldn't necessarily be learned out one from the other. Now, the Gemara goes back to the brisa that we mentioned, where we had mentioned that as a question. We said, really, is v'yatzachin men kasav the source of kiddushay kesef and kesef lod and zev yesh kes lod and acher? But we said we have a brisa that used the pasuk with something else, and we answered that question. Said no problem. There's an extra yud. Extra yud could tell us both drushes. Fine. But now once we broaden that brisa, classic Talmudic style, we're going to jump into that brisa and discuss it. So gufa. We said in the pasuk, it says v'yatzachinam, that this girl, the 10-year-old girl who was sold by her father as a slave for another Jewish family. So it says when she's going to be yatzachim, she's going to go free, and ain't cost her without money. It doesn't say when that is. So the brisa explains, I'll tell you when that is. Yatzachina means Eli Mei Bagris, when she becomes a begeres, which is 6 months after having reached puberty. And ain't cost her when the means she goes out without any money. Eli Mei Nagos, that's the days when she becomes a naira, which we'll just assume is around age 12. Says the Gemara, wait a second. When the nairis, just say she goes out when she becomes a naira, and then you wouldn't have to say that she goes out when she's a begeres, right? Which is obviously that you have 12 years old going out, then you don't have to talk about 12 and a half. Why are you saying both of them in the pasuk? Some Rabbi says, "Ba ze valimit al ze." You're right. This one comes and teaches on the other one. What Rashi explains is that the pasuk doesn't explicitly say the concept of nairis. It's learned out by itself. How do we know taka? The pasuk says she goes out for free without any money. How do we know? So Rashi explains actually that logic, which is important. We learn that out by default because there's nothing else for us to suspend. Why would a girl go out for free from her master? So what would make sense is when her body changes, when she develops into a new stage of her life, which is when she becomes a begeres. So we had to say both terminologies. Why? Because had you written only one terminology, I would have said that the pasuk is coming to teach you the further along development, the further away, which is at a begeres. But nairis maybe is not enough of a change, and that would not help her go out. So therefore, you need another pasuk to teach on the first source to say that, well, obviously then the second one is teaching you nairis. Because if you have one source, I would say only begeres, because she's totally an adult right now. But nairis, which is, is 21 is 18. 21, okay, then you're an adult. 18, 16, it's like, okay, I don't know. So he's saying one source, I would say, when does she go out free? Oh, begeres, now she's an adult. But nairis, I would say not. So you have one to teach on the other. That's why you need to have both of these sources to teach me this idea, because that's the only way I would know that of nairis. As the Gemara says, midi to have a toshev v'sacher. You find a similar theme by a totally unrelated halacha, by a toshev and a sacher, which we can describe in a second, which are in the context of the halachas of truma, that we darshan a certain way regarding an eved ivri. So there we have the same idea where we say one term that's vague, and I would only know the one that's the lesser of the chiddush. So then I say the other one, which is the bigger of the chiddush. That's the same thing we're saying over here. The yatzachinem in kasav, because I only said one term, I would say only bagris, and I need to say the other term to say no, even yimei naris. What's this other source? The time like learn the brisa. Pasuk says in Yikra that toshev, the settler, which, and this is the context regarding truma. Truma, it says in the pasuk that toshev koyin v'sacher lo yechol kodesh. That when a koyin has a toshev or a sacher, which we're going to translate in a second what that means, those toshev and sacher cannot eat from his truma. Now, who is the toshev? Who is the settler? That's an eved ivri, a Jewish slave, that he said, Ahavtius ishti v'sadoini, he says, I love my master. And they take him to the door and they make a hole in his ear. And he stays as an eved till Yevel. And let's say his master is a koyin, you would think, okay, Shain is a eved, like an eved Kanani eats the truma, maybe he'll also know. even so, his body is not acquired to his master that's a kohen, like other non-Jewish slaves that could eat truma. So Taishiv that cannot eat truma is referring to kanei olam, meaning olam doesn't mean forever, it means till yovel. He cannot eat truma. And sacher, the hired laborer, is that kanei kinyan shanim, that refers to a Jew that's sold as a slave only for a period of 6 years. And it's not yet 6 years, so he's there, he's a Eved, he lives with his master out in Winnipeg, and he's a kohen, and he's a Estridima and whatever. No, cannot have out there wherever he lives in Ashkelon, whatever it is, he cannot have truma from the master. Now the question is like this: what are you saying? Both of them. Just say the guy who's an Eved for till Yovel, he cannot eat truma. He's going to be there for 43 years. He's going to have a white vasabud. There still as an Eved. No, all those years you cannot eat truma. So what do you have to say? The guy was there only for 6 years. By name I'll say, the guy who was there for Yovel can eat truma. Isn't all the more so? The guy was there only for 6 years, can't eat truma. Says the Brisa, no. If that would be the case, I would say, Toishiv zekanikin yishanim. If I only had one terminology, which the Toishiv word is the settler, that's the guy who sounds like is the bigger Kiddush word versus Sachar, a hired laborer. It could be for a day or two, a week, or whatever. If I would only say the term Toishiv, I would say, yeah, what does it mean to settler? That's the guy who was there for 6 years. I would say the guy was there forever. The guy was there till Yab. I would say he does eat truma. Therefore, you have to say the term sacher, which now teaches me regarding Toishiv. That sacher obviously refers to the guy who was there for 6 years. To teach me that, what does Toishiv teach me? That even though he's an Eved for Yovel, still in Eichel, that he's not going to eat truma, because obviously one of them is teaching me regarding the one that's called Nirtza, the guy who has his ear that they make a hole in it. Because since you're saying both, then Rashi says, wait a second. So why did the Brisa say that Toishiv is the guy that's kind of in Kinya Olam, and Sacher is the guy who is Kinya Shanim? I thought the first one is the one that's teaching me the Shanim, and then the new one is teaching me the how would you know necessarily? So Rashi says no. The understanding is Nirtzu would be from Toishiv, because that's the one that's more meyushiv, because more than the guy who's there only for 6 years. Al Kapanim, the reason why you needed both terminologies is because if you would have only said one, I would have said it refers to the sacher, meaning to the guy who's there for 6 years. So therefore, I say another terminology to say that no, even the guy who's there till Yovel is not going to eat truma. And that's the same thing over here. It says v'yatzachin mein kasev. What's v'yatzachin mein kasev? Oh, v'yatzachin is a mei bagris, and kasev is mei nairis. Tell me nairis. What does bagris have anything to do with anything? You're going out of 12. Why say 12 and a half? It's not even relevant. Says no, because had I only said one, I would have said that term is referring to bagris. I need to say another one to teach you nairis, just like I teach you regarding the Toishiv Asachar by Truma. The Gemara says, wait a second. Abaya asked on Rav, it says, not the same thing. It's not a good comparison. It's not a good precedent that you're trying to bring for your argument. Midam is comparable. Hasam over there by the guy who's the Nirtza or the not Nirtza. Today, Gufininu. Those are two different bodies. They're two different slaves. It's possible that this master will have in his house, by this kohen, he'll have one guy who's there for a period of 6 years, another one who's going to be there for the next 47 years. That even when the Torah tells you that the guy who's going to be there for 47 years, the guy who's going to be there till Yovel, that he cannot eat truma, and then it says the other one. So you're right. Have a sacher, this guy who's going to be there only for the 6 years, is a milsuz asa b'kavachayma. You're right. In other words, that even if the pasuk is telling you now that, already told you that the guy who has a hole in his ear, he can't eat truma, and then it's going to tell you regarding the guy who does not have the hole in the ear. Now, even though Torah didn't have to write it, because of course I would know it from a Kabbalah Chaimer, I could answer and I tell you, although Sacha can be learned from a Kabbalah Chaimer, that's okay, because we know this Talmudic dictum of Milsa Das Kabbalah Chaimer, something that can be learned from the Kabbalah Chaimer, the pasuk goes out of its way and spells it out in the Torah. So therefore, when you wrote it unspecific, one's Toishiv, one's Sacher, so you're right, Bazeh, v'limen al zeh. And we can't ask and say, just say Nirtza explicitly, and don't say that of Sacher, because the Torah wrote it vague, because Lamaisa, the Torah would anyway spell it out maybe. It could tell you Nirtza and Ein Nirtza. It's not shver, because we know sometimes the Torah spells out something even that you can learn from a Kabbalah Chaimer. The problem is, but you, Rav, that you're trying to compare the same thing for our context of Yatzachim and Kasef. Chad Gufahi. It's one body. It's one girl. It's the same person. It's not like over there we have one Evid for 6 years and one for 50 years. And you're right, even though, of course, I would say that if this guy's not going to have for sure this guy, but it's okay. I can still tell it to you, and they're two different people. But over here, it doesn't make sense. Because kinafkile, when does the girl leave from the domain of the master? Is benairus when she's 12. My boy Gabi. You never have an Amma going out at 12 and a half. How could the pasuk say something that's irrelevant, that's impossible? Just say nairus explicitly. You're right. You're saying if you're going to be vague, it's vague and you're not going to know. So you got to say two. Tell you backwards and nairus. But that's the question we're asking in the pasuk. But then zug. Tell me explicitly what you're talking about, because it doesn't make sense to say both. They're never going to have a backwards going out. But you're right. You could have said explicitly, but even if I had said explicitly, I would maybe still say it, because I could, even though it's a kabbalah, I could tell you an obvious halacha. But here it's not an obvious halacha. It's irrelevant. It's not a halacha. It never happens. No girl at 12 and a half is going out. They're already out at 12. So it says the Gemara, Abai says a different shot. He says, we didn't need this source of bagris, because the girl's going out of Naira already, a lebegger de islandess. Only when an islandess, who is a girl that doesn't have the signs of puberty like a regular girl, when she becomes a begeres, is when she'll go out from being a maidservant. Because, as the Gemara explains, you would have thought to say, benairis teipuk. Yeah. If it would only say that a girl goes out and she becomes a naira, you would say only when she reaches the age of puberty. But bagris leitepuk. Actually, bagris itself would not take you out. Meaning when you become an adult. Mashmalam, that's what the pasuk had to tell me, that no. Yes, you could go out when you become a naira or begeris. You said, no, begeris never. It's irrelevant. You always go out when you're naira. Naira is before bagris. No, there are certain girls who don't have puberty, and they go straight to adulthood, which is an illness. So when she turns 20 years old, then you're obviously an adult already. And that's when she's going to go out. And that's what the halacha is for, to teach me halacha of illness. Now, Taisa wants to know, and says, that how do we know that? The problem is, to be an illness, you have to have all these different signs. And how do we know she's an illness?
You mean to say that an illness also, father can make Kidushin on illness until she has her.
Right, it's a good question. Right, right. If she's a naira, right, he has rights in her when she's a naira, and she only becomes a gedayla when she reaches the age of 20. So Taisa says, meaning we would know retroactively. Meaning, right, we wouldn't know. We would find out retroactively that this is if she's an illness or not. But upon them, they go. What? No, you're chayv in all mitzvah once you reach a naira. When you become a naira, you become bas mitzvah. You're saying because if she doesn't get right, they do discuss that, right? Meaning if she doesn't have nairis, right? So we don't even know, right? She probably would be a suffix or something, because it is retroactive that she was already an adult or not, right? And economic. So that's a bias shot. Why you need to have this halacha of begeris, because l'chayr is irrelevant. Says no, it's relevant for that amounts. And that says the Gemara. He asked in Abai's interpretation. He says, "Wait a second, lav kavachaymahu? What? That's really what Bagheera is coming to teach me, that the islandess is going to go out when she reaches the age of 20 because she's a Bagheera? But it's a kavachaymer. Umasimanim, if signs of puberty, you have the two pubic hairs, meaning what nairis is. It doesn't remove her from the domain of her father, because like the Gemara said in the previous Amid, that her earnings still go to the father when she's naira. Yet still Matzima Shazad, and it takes her out of the dominion of when she's a maidservant from her master. So Bagris, or when a girl reaches the age of Pegeres, Shemitzima Shazad, which removes her from the father's domain, because we don't find anywhere that the father has any rights in his daughter only when she's a naira. As the pasuk says in Bram Chabez Laviha naira. She's Begeres, the father loses all rights. So isn't it a kavachim, all the more so that's going to remove her from the dominion of the master? I need a pasuk to teach me. Isn't it a kavachim? Gemara later is going to ask. It says, you just said a moment ago, so why are you asking this question as if it's a grace upslug of Abaya? Yeah, You're right, it's a kavod chayma, but the pasuk still might have said, like we said, but Toshav Esach is a kavod chayma. We still said it. Could be that's why we said it. But Akapan, that's Mar Bar Avashi's question. Abai says, come on, you don't need to have this halacha of begeres to teach me islandness, because of course begeres is going to remove it. If Nairis removes, then for sure begeres will. So Elam Rav Ashi says a third pshat. Says no, loy nitzuch. We didn't need the pasuk of begeres that an amavri will be removed from the master with bagres. Ele iker zvina dalness. Actually, it has to come to teach us that an islandess could even be sold when she's a minor, like other girls. This is what Taisa says it on this point. Like, well, how do you know? I know she's an islandess to say if she could be sold or not. And it says, yeah, retroactive. We're going to find out if she was or not. But that's what Mar Bar Ashi is what you need to have the pasuk for, because you would have thought to say the asis amani nairis, a girl who could bring signs of puberty, havasvina. That's going to be a sale, like we see when she become. If I only said in the pasuk when she becomes a naira, she goes out, I would have said, oh, okay, must be a girl who could become a naira, is a girl who could be sold and then go out with nairas. But the lo asis amani nairis, but a girl who cannot bring signs of puberty because she's an illness, maybe I would say lavasvina zvina. That she cannot be sold in the first place. No, I don't need bagris to tell me that she can go out. Of course she could go out. But I would have thought to say that she can't go out, she can't be sold in the first place because she can't become a naira. That's why we continue to Talmud Beis, Kamash Malan, that's what B'yatzachinim B'chulu, that's why we needed B'yatzachinim and Kasev to B'yatzachinim to tell you Elimei Bagris, which the question was what I mean. If in Kasev teach you Elimei Nagas, of course I don't need a pasuk for Elimei Bagris. No, you do. You need for idleness. It says, what do you mean idleness? Idleness? Of course she's going to go out when she becomes a Geras at age 20. Because it's a Kabbalah Chema, like Rabbi Ashi just said. So no, of course she'll go out. I would have thought to say she can't be sold because she doesn't have neighbors. It's to say no. Another way of leaving is with bagris that she does have. Oh, then she could be sold, and that's what the Yatzachinim is coming to teach me of Elu Yomei bagris. Now the Gemara just goes back, as we had mentioned already, the question that we had said that Rabbi Ashi had asked on Abaya. So the Gemara asks on his question. That he says, asking on Abaya. And he says, what do you mean Abaya? Isn't a Kabbalah Chayim? You're telling me really I need to have the Yatzachin to teach me bagris to tell me that the islanders could go out with bagris? Isn't a Kabbalah Chayim that if Nairis, which doesn't remove it from the father, removes it from the other, and so then bagris removes it from the father, isn't it a Kabbalah Chayim? What do you mean? I mean, we said this just a moment ago. Even though it's a Kabbalah Chayim, the pasuk goes out of the way and mentioned it. So what's his grace of question on Abaya? That, if the pasuk is coming to teach me that she's leaving as an islandess with bagris, you know Kabbalah Chayim, and if you know of a Kabbalah Chayim, why can't that be what the pasuk's teaching? The pasuk still goes through the effort and says, like we said by Toshav Esach, that even though you would know Sachar from a Kabbalah Chayim, we still say it. Says Gemara, you're right. But when do we say this answer of Asa Milsid the Asa Kabbalah Chayim is when you have nothing else to answer. So it's like it's the Joker answer. You say after pink faked. When you have nothing to say, you say this. You're left with this. Okay, you say talk about the girl. But what is a good answer? You give a good answer. Why should we give your answer, which is a b'di'evid, if I can give a l'ketchila answer? Now, this was all explaining the first halacha of our Mishnah, of the first of the three ways that a woman could be acquired with the kinyan of Kidushin, which is that of Kesef. And the source was, as we said, from the pasuk of B'yatzachinim en Kesef, en Kesef laden zeh, av yesh Kesef laden acher. Now the Gemara brings, which already had referenced previously, V'tana ma'aseh lamahacha. A Tana of a Braisa learns out the Kidushin of Kesef from a different source, which Rabbi Yehuda had learned out from Ein Kesef. This Tana learns out from Kicha from Stei Ephron. The Tana learn the Braisa. Pasuk says in Devarim, it says Kikach ish ishu ba'Allah. If a man's going to take a woman and is going to be intimate with her, and then it says if she's not going to find favor in his eyes, because he finds things that are disparaging or whatever about her. So you see that the pasuk is going to require a get to release this woman from this taking, which the end of the pasuk says, if she doesn't find favor, then he's going to give her a safer krisis. Now, so what's this taking that is a marriage, obviously, because it requires a get at the end of it if they're not happy. Now, en kichel b'kesef, that taking is with money. How do you know that? Because if a pasuk in Bereshis says, Nasati kesef asada kach mimeni, that I gave the money of the field, take it from me. Now, so just like over there, it's referring to Avram Avinu giving money for the Stei Ephron, so to over here, taking the woman is going to be referring to with money. That's a second source. This halacha. That's Gzeir Shava. The word kikach and kach mimeni, right? And Taisa points out specifically that it is a Gzeir Shava. It's not the translation of the word yikach itself. Taisa goes out of his way to explain that. Now, the question, however, is like this. Well, we have sources for shtar and bia. Oh, yeah, I don't know if that means that this is meaning, the terminology in kich el b'kesev is just translating this taking, because the pasuk says uvala, as we're going to see later on. So it says other ways of doing it. It's just saying don't say taking, but money, meaning samayim tazoy. Don't translate like this. The wording could sound like as if that's the only thing. So the Gemara says like this. Well, dinu. Wait a second. It's a kabbalah that a woman, and again we get back like drasha type technical questions. The Gemara says over here, says, why do you need a pasuk to teach me that the woman could be acquired with money? I know it from a kabbalah. What's the kabbalah? Says the Gemara like this: Uma amavriya. If the Jewish maidservant, she'ein niknas bebiyah, meaning if her father gives her over to a guy who lives in the other town, he gives her as bia to be a shivcha. He says, here, sleep with my daughter, and then she'll be your shivcha. Well, that's not, you can't become a shivcha through bia. She can't be acquired as amavriya with bia. Yet niknis bekesev, yet his daughter can be acquired as a shivcha with money, as it says in the pasuk, when you're coming to redeem the girl, it says in Mikra Chavei, mikesev miknasai, from the monies that she was acquired with, or he, whichever slave. So you see, she can be acquired with money and not with bia. Oh, so says the Gemara, zush niknis bebiyah. So the Jewish woman who could be acquired with intimacy, as the Gemara is going to learn later on from the pasuk, it says uvala, that he's intimate with her. In the din take the mekasef, isn't a kabbalah they can acquire with money? Because look, the kinyan that the amma doesn't have, the woman now has. So the one that she does have, the amma, for sure should work by the Jewish woman. So why do you need a special pasuk of ein kasef or that of kicha kicha? It's a kabbalah from amma vriya. Says the Gemara, no, yavama techiach. The yavama, the woman who's waiting for yibum, will disprove that, because sheniknas bebiyah, she is acquired with bia, meaning the yavam, the brother-in-law. If he's intimate with her, then she becomes his wife, and he performs the mitzvah of yibum. Ve'ena niknas bekesef, she cannot be acquired with money to the yavam to be like his wife for all halachas, to be divorced with a get without chalitza. As the Gemara learned later on, that it says in the pasuk, Yavama yavi aleha ve'yibma, her yavam will have intimacy with her and do yibum, which the only thing that finishes up the mitzvah is bia, money not. Now there is a rabbinic idea about maimer, about kesef Kidushin, that's for a yavama, but biblically, and to finish up the job, the only thing that does it is bia. So if we find by yavama that the only thing that works is bia and not money, because the pasuk is explicitly saying is only bia, so wait a second, you see that your kabbalah falls away, because you wanted to prove from Amavriya that if bia doesn't work and kesef does work, so isha which bia does work, kesef is sure. It's not true, because yavama exactly is that halacha. Bia works and kesef doesn't work. So says the Gemara, wait, no, you could refute that and say, no, mali yavama, yeah, of course, really, if you work with bia, for sure kesef should work. It's just that by yavama, the reason why kesef doesn't work is because it's an inferior type of a transaction, because she can't inict this b'shtar. We find that yavama can't be acquired even with a document. What are you going to say over here by the Jewish woman who could be acquired with bia and shtar? Isn't it a kabbalah that she should be acquired with kesef as a kabbalah from Amavriya? That's why the pasuk has to tell you when the man takes a woman that you could be kind with kesef. So what are you talking about? What is it? It's like you're having a conversation with someone. You thought like you just convinced them. Somebody said, "Okay, so we're going to do this." What do you mean? Didn't we just? You just told me it's a kabbalah. You wanted to ask on the kabbalah. You said there's a kabbalah. Amavriya, it's kind of with kesef, not bia. The Jewish woman can be acquired with bia for sure with kesef. And then you wanted to slug it up. You wanted to refute it by saying, "Wait, the Yavama, it's not true. Yavama has bia and not a kinyan of kesef." We said, "What are you comparing Yavama? Yavama doesn't have shtar either, but the Jewish woman has shtar and bia, so for sure kesef should work." So I thought we were at an understanding that there's a kabbalah. So why are you saying? Therefore, it says, I don't need the pasuk. It's a kabbalah. So the Gemara says no, because Amar Rav Ashi says because you could say Mikara Dedina. From the place where you're learning the whole source of the teaching of the Kavachayma, which is the Amavriya, from that source itself, Pircha, you have a flaw, you could respond as a refutation. And like Rashi says, the reason why we're saying Mikara Dedina Pircha is because the first refutation the Gemara tried was from some other third-party source, from the Halacha of Yavama, which is not from the Iker Kavachayma, it's from somewhere else. Now we're saying, no, the reason is the thing itself is difficult. Because Mehecha Gamais is low. Where you bring the Kavachaymer that Kesef should work by Isha is Ma'amavriya, from the Jewish maidservant. That you said, just like the Jewish maidservant is kind of with Kesef, even though we're not Bia, here you kind of Bia for sure with Kesef. Says the Gemara, no. Ma'amavriya, what do you learn there from Ma'amavriya? Shken Yoitze Bekesef. The Jewish maidservant leaves with money, meaning she redeems herself within the 6 years if she wants to, like the pasuk in Shmais Galav, v'hefta, she can redeem herself. Now, since money is considered significant to redeem her, so it's also significant to buy her. What are you going to say with a woman? She anyway to be kesef. She can't leave with money. The Gemara learns out in the next daf, in Daf Yomi Aleph, that sefer karsa, it's a sefer krisa, only the document could divorce her, and nothing else. You can't give her money and say, here, take $100 and get out of here. That's not going to divorce her. So I can't learn that from Amavriya. Because even though I thought I had a Kavachayim to say if Amavriya, Bia doesn't work, but yet Kesef works, for sure that of Isha where Bia works, for sure Kesef works. Not true. Because Amavriya, the reason why Kesef works is because it works both ways. That's how you take her in, that's how you take her out. But by woman, you can't send her out with money. Maybe I would say, therefore, you can't take her in either with money. So it's not a Kavachayim, and therefore I need to have a source of kicha from Stay Ephraim to teach me that yes, you could get engaged with money. Now the Gemara sums it up and says we had two sources that we spoke about. How do we know the Kidushin of Kesef? We had to have the source of Rabbi Yehuda from the previous daf of that she goes out without money to teach you, as we had said previously, that there's no money when she leaves this adon, but there is money when she leaves another adon, which is her father, that there's going to be money of Kidushin that's going to go to her father. And then we have to have the teaching that we taught in this daf, that kicha, that when a man takes a woman, the word yikach refers to that of kesef. Why didn't he both? Because these kazach man kikach had the Torah only said when a man takes a woman. Having mean, I would have thought to say, Kidushin the Yov Labal, that the Kidushin, the ring that the husband gives to her, is Tidahava, belongs to the girl herself. Kazach man therefore the Torah to write that when the girl leaves her master's dominion as a naira, there's not going to be money for this master. But another master, her father, when she's a naira, then it's going to go to that master, it's going to go to the father. So if I didn't have the Yatzachin, I wouldn't know it goes to the father. Now, because I only had the source of Yatzachin men Kasev, that ain't Kezlad Zebel, there is Kezlad Na'achar, I mean, I would have said, yeah, but Heicha the Yava Ihi Lididei, if the girl, right, we know the ring, double ring ceremony, if the girl gives the ring to the man, Vikidashtoi, and she engages him, the feminist is coming up and saying, here, you become engaged to me. That's how Rashi says, that Haret Mukudish Li. Taisa says that's difficult because it wouldn't even make sense. Many things that the progressive movement doesn't even make sense halachically. He says, how could a woman tell a man, Haret Mukudish Li? Man telling a woman Haret Mukudish Li makes sense because Mukudish, we said from Taisus previously, means mufresh, separated. A woman, when this Kidushin becomes separated from every other man, because a woman's not be married to two men. How could a woman tell a man Haret Mukudish Li? Doesn't make sense because he's permitted in two wives. So it doesn't make sense to say that. So Taisus disagrees with Rashi for that reason. It wouldn't make sense to say that that's the Havmina. Rather, you have to explain. She says, I am Mukudeshes Lach, where she's the one who's just saying the speech. And you have to say that even though it says Yava L'Didei, that she's giving to him is Lav Dafka, because her father receives the Kedushin, rather it just means that she's making the speech. But yeah, the man's giving the ring to the woman. It's just that you would have thought to say, when she says the speech, not he's saying Hared Mukadeshli, she's saying, I'm engaged to you. You would have thought have a Kedushi, that would be a Kedushin. Why? Because, like Rashi explains, Since we're just telling you that money works to create marriage, who cares his money, her money? Why would the man be more important than the woman? So therefore the Tana had to go say explicitly, Kasach mani ki yikach, when he takes, Veloy ki sikach, and not when she takes. He has to take, and not her. So if I needed to have both sources of Yatzachim and Kasef to say that it goes to the father, I always have to have kikach isha. Of course I know that Kesser works, but I would say maybe it could work either way. She could give him the ring, or she could say it, or whatever it is. That's what you need to have, kikach isha, that no, he's taking her, and that's the only way that it works. Now, we finished the conversation regarding the first of the kinyanim of Kidushin, which was that of Kesef. Now the Gemara brings the source of the second kinyan that can accomplish Kidushin, which is that of Bia, which is that of being intimate. Which this is really a brisa, seemingly, and it's going on the pasuk that says in the Varm, Kikach esh isha, when the man will take a woman, the next words are Uva Allah, and he's going to have Bia with her. So you see that a woman can be acquired with intimacy. But here also the Gemara goes through the same conversation and says, wait a second, why do you need a pasuk? Well, I didn't know it's a kal v'chomer. What's the kal v'chomer? Uma yavama, if regarding the yavama. She'ein niknas b'kesef. A yavama cannot be bought, acquired with money. When his brother dies without any children, he can't say, here, you give her a ring and now she's his wife. That's not going to work. Yet niknas b'bi, she could acquire with bia. Oh, so zush niknas b'kesef. We went through a whole conversation to show how the Jewish woman, the wife, can be acquired with money. In addition, bia, of course she can be acquired with bia. No, and this is the same conversation we had in the reverse from previously. The Jewish maidservant will disprove that. She can be acquired as a slave woman with money. And you can't acquire her as a maidservant. Here, come here, Rachala. And we have bia, now you're my maidservant. It doesn't work like that. So it's not a kal v'chomer that bia is going to work by a woman because of kesef. Says, wait a second, that's not a refutation. Well, no, of course bia doesn't work by mavriya. You're not acquiring her to be as a woman. So of course it doesn't make sense for bia to work. But Taima Bazu, what do you say about the woman, the wife, the girl, the girlfriend, the fiance, the acquisition, if for the purpose of marriage, and it should be a kal v'chomer. If it works by Yavama, which money doesn't even work, here money works, for sure bia should work. So I said, wait a second, you had me at a low. What didn't we say? Why do you need a pasuk? What are you talking about? You just told me you know from a kal v'chomer. You thought you were going to refute the kal v'chomer from asking from Amari, but I told you it's not a refutation because that's not for Ishas. So what do you bring me a pasuk? So Rav Ashi says, like we said in the previous discussion, the same idea. Because you could say, no, from the whole source that you're learning out from is flawed itself. Because where you bring the kal v'chomer that you want to say that the Jewish woman could be acquired with bia? Miyavama. Because Yavama, kesef doesn't work and bia works. The regular woman that you're getting married to for sure should work. No. Mali Yavama shekin skuka by medis. Yavama, maybe yes, maybe B is going to work. Why? Because she already has zika, a bond to her brother-in-law because of her late husband who passed away. The B is only coming to finish up the deal. But maybe, maybe you're going to say, but what over here by a regular woman that he was never married to, that she has no zika bond, there was never a kinyan beforehand, I would say maybe that would not work as bia. So it's not a kal v'chomer for Yavama, because Yavama is like, okay, we're already connected already. Hashem already is based in Mir Shidduch. Right? We just have to finish up the deal and do bia. Okay, that's going to work as a kinyan. But a regular woman who said that just the first time you went on a few shidduch dates and you do bia, that's going to be make the kinyan. Therefore you have to say, uvala to say that, yeah, bia is going to work. It would not know from a kal v'chomer from the halacha of Yavama. I think it's any time.